He was sitting in seat 1A, sipping sparkling water and checking the stock market on his phone when a flight attendant snatched the glass from his hand. She didn't ask him to move. She told him he didn't belong there. Why? Because a man in a bespoke suit, who turned out to be nothing more than a mid-level manager with an ego problem, wanted his seat. They thought the man in the hoodie was a nobody. They thought they could humiliate him and toss him back to coach. But they didn't know that the nobody was Donovan Cross, the CIO of the holding company that owned the lease on every single plane in their fleet. He didn't just get mad. He made one phone call that didn't just ground the plane, it grounded the entire airline. The air inside the cabin of Flight 492 was stale, recycled, and carried the faint, synthetic scent of industrial cleaner, masked by cheap air freshener. It was a humid Tuesday in Atlanta, and the tarmac shimmered under a relentless sun, baking the aluminum hull of the sky-high Airlines Boeing 737. Donovan Cross adjusted the cuffs of his oversized charcoal hoodie and leaned back into the plush leather of seat 1A. He was exhausted. It had been a 72-hour sprint of negotiations in Tokyo, followed by a red-eye to Los Angeles, and finally, this connecting flight to New York. He wasn't dressed like the man who had just closed a $4 billion merger. He was dressed like a man who wanted to sleep. His sweatpants were designer, but they looked worn. His sneakers were rare vintage Jordans, but to the untrained eye, they were just old gym shoes. He closed his eyes, listening to the dull roar of the auxiliary power unit humming beneath the floorboards. He needed this quiet. He needed the 3 hours of peace before he landed in JFK and had to face the board of directors at Vertex Holdings. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, nasal, and dripping with an entitlement that instantly set Donovan's teeth on edge. He didn't open his eyes immediately, hoping the person was talking to someone else. I said, "Excuse me." A finger tapped his shoulder. Hard. Donovan opened one eye. Standing in the aisle was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that specialized in arrogance. He was wearing a navy blue suit that was a size too tight in the shoulders, a bright red tie, and a watch that was too big for his wrist. He was holding a boarding pass like it was a weapon. "Can I help you?" Donovan asked, his voice low and gravelly from lack of sleep. "You're in my seat," the man said, sneering. He didn't look at Donovan's face. He looked at Donovan's hoodie, then his shoes, then gave a dismissive snort. Donovan sighed and pulled his own boarding pass out of his pocket. He glanced at it, then back at the man. "Seat 1A. First class. Pretty sure this is me." The man, whose face was already flushing a blotchy pink, scoffed. "Look, pal, there's clearly been a mistake. I booked 1A. I always sit in 1A. I'm a platinum elite member with this airline. Maybe you should check your ticket again. I think you're confused about where the back of the plane is." Donovan straightened up, his patience already fraying. "I'm not confused. The ticket says 1A. If you have an issue, talk to the flight attendant." "Oh, I will," the man spat. He turned around and snapped his fingers, actually snapped them, at a flight attendant who was busy organizing the galley. "Hey, you! Sweetheart, we have a problem here." The flight attendant, a woman named Beatrice, according to her silver name tag, hurried over. She had a tight, forced smile plastered on her face, her blonde hair pulled back in a bun so severe it looked painful. She looked at the man in the suit, taking in the expensive luggage and the platinum tag on his briefcase, and her smile widened. Then she looked at Donovan in his hoodie and sweatpants, and the smile vanished instantly. "What seems to be the problem, Mr. Fletcher?" Beatrice asked, reading the name off the man's extended boarding pass. "This person," Mr. Fletcher said, gesturing vaguely at Donovan as if he were a stain on the upholstery, is in my seat. I booked 1A. I need him moved, immediately. I have a very important meeting to prepare for, and I cannot be cramped next to the window. Beatrice nodded sympathetically. Of course, Mr. Fletcher. Let me see. She took Fletcher's boarding pass. It read, Seat 1B. She paused. Mr. Fletcher, your ticket actually says 1B. That's the aisle seat right next to this gentleman. Fletcher's face turned a darker shade of red. I don't care what the printout says. My assistant specifically requested the window, and frankly, he lowered his voice to a loud whisper that was meant to be heard. I don't feel comfortable sitting next to him. He looks like he snuck in from economy. Are we sure he even paid for this seat? Donovan sat up straight, his eyes narrowing. The air in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. Excuse me, Donovan said, his voice calm but dangerous. I paid full fare for this seat. Check the manifest. Beatrice didn't check the manifest. She looked at Fletcher, who was tapping his foot impatiently, and then she looked at Donovan. In her mind, the calculation was simple. Fletcher looked like money. He looked like the kind of corporate traveler who kept the airline in business. Donovan looked like a rapper, or an athlete, or maybe just someone who got a lucky upgrade. To her, he didn't look like first class. She turned to Donovan, her voice taking on that condescending tone reserved for unruly children. Sir, may I see your boarding pass, please? Donovan handed it to her. She scanned it. It was valid. Paid in full. Seat 1A. But Fletcher wasn't having it. I'm not sitting next to him, Beatrice. He smells like outside. Look at him. It's making me uneasy. I spend $50,000 a year with this airline. Fix this. Beatrice made a choice. It was the wrong choice, a career-ending choice, but she made it. She looked at Donovan. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to move. Donovan laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Move? Move where? This is my seat. We have an open seat in Economy Plus, Beatrice said, her voice hardening. Row 12. It has extra legroom. Mr. Fletcher is a priority customer, and he has expressed a safety concern. A safety concern? Donovan unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. He was 6'3", towering over both Beatrice and Fletcher. My hoodie is a safety concern. My skin color is a safety concern. Which is it, Beatrice? Lower your voice, sir, or I will have to call the captain, Beatrice snapped, stepping back. We have the right to reseat passengers for the comfort and safety of the flight. You are being aggressive. I'm being aggressive? Donovan pointed a finger at Fletcher. This man just insulted me, demanded my seat because he doesn't like how I look, and you're siding with him. I'm not moving. If he wants 1A, he can buy the airline. Fletcher laughed. Buy the airline? Buddy, you probably couldn't buy the peanuts. Last chance, sir, Beatrice said, reaching for the interphone on the wall. Take seat 12C, or I'm having you removed from the flight. Donovan looked at her. He looked at Fletcher, who was smirking, already adjusting his tie, as if the victory was won. Donovan took a deep breath. He thought about fighting it right there. He thought about causing a scene. But then, a colder, sharper thought entered his mind. He remembered who he was. He remembered what was in his briefcase in the overhead bin. Fine, Donovan said softly. You want me off the plane? I'll get off the plane. But I'm not taking 12C. I'm deplaning. Good, Fletcher said. Don't let the door hit you. Beatrice looked relieved. I can arrange a refund for the difference in fare. I don't want a refund, Donovan said, grabbing his leather messenger bag from the overhead bin. The bag was made of Italian leather, worth more than Beatrice's car, but she didn't notice. I want you to remember this moment, Beatrice, and you, Mr. Fletcher. Remember that you wanted this seat. Donovan walked past them, down the narrow aisle of first class, past the curious eyes of the other passengers who had watched the exchange in silence. He walked out the cabin door and onto the jet bridge. He didn't scream. He didn't shout. He just walked up the ramp, back into the terminal, and found a quiet corner near the gate agent's desk. He pulled out his phone. He didn't call customer service. He didn't call his lawyer. He dialed a private number. It rang twice. "Mr. Cross?" a voice answered. It was Gavin Pierce, the VP of Operations for Vertex Holdings. "Gavin," Donovan said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Pull up the contract for Sky High Airlines, specifically the leasing agreement for their 737 fleet." "I have it right here, sir. Is there a problem?" "Yes," Donovan said, watching through the glass as the ground crew loaded luggage onto the plane he had just been kicked off of. "They just violated the morality and non-discrimination clause of our leasing agreement. Section 4, Paragraph 2. I want to execute the termination clause, effective immediately." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Sir, that's 40 aircraft. If we terminate the lease, they lose their insurance immediately. They can't fly. It will ground their entire eastern seaboard operations." "I know," Donovan said. "Do it. Ground them. Every single one." Inside the cockpit of Flight 49I2, Captain James O'Connell was running through his pre-flight checklist. The engines were spooling, the fuel levels were checked, and the flight plan to New York was locked in. He was looking forward to this flight. The weather was clear, and he was scheduled for a long weekend off once they landed. "Tower, this is Sky High 492. Ready for pushback," O'Connell said into his headset. "Sky High 492. Hold position." The air traffic control voice crackled back. "We have a flag on your tail number." O'Connell frowned. "Say again, Tower." "We are green across the board." "Negative. 492. We just received a priority notice from the FAA database. Your aircraft's registration has been suspended. The owner of the aircraft has revoked the operating lease. You are not cleared for departure. Shut down engines immediately." O'Connell blinked. He looked at his co-pilot, a young man named Rick, whose face had gone pale. "Did I hear that right? Revoked lease?" "Captain," Rick said, pointing at the ASAR's screen, the digital communication system used by Airlines. A message was flashing in bright red text. "System alert. Critical failure. Asset repossession initiated. All Sky High Airlines flights operating Vertex leased aircraft must ground immediately. Insurance void." "What on earth?" O'Connell muttered. He grabbed the radio. "Tower, this has to be a glitch. We have passengers loaded. We are 5 minutes from takeoff." "Captain, if you move that plane an inch, you are violating federal aviation law. The aircraft is no longer insured. A tug is on its way to tow you back to the gate. Do not start engines." O'Connell slammed his hand on the dashboard. "Beatrice!" he yelled into the cabin intercom. "Get in here." Back in the cabin, Beatrice was just pouring a glass of champagne for Mr. Fletcher, who was happily settled into seat 1A, stretching his legs out. "Finally," Fletcher sighed, taking the glass. "Some peace and quiet without the riffraff. You handled that beautifully, sweetheart." "Just doing my job, Mr. Fletcher," Beatrice said, beaming. She felt powerful. She had protected the comfort of a high-value client. Suddenly, the plane shuddered. The hum of the engines died down into a whining silence. The lights flickered and switched to battery power. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain O'Connell's voice boomed over the PA system, sounding angry and confused. "I apologize for the inconvenience, but we have been ordered by air traffic control to return to the gate. We have a legal issue regarding the aircraft." A groan went up through the cabin. "Legal issue?" Fletcher scoffed. "Probably some paperwork error. Incompetence everywhere these days." Beatrice's phone in her apron pocket buzzed. It was a text from the other flight attendant in the back. "Did you hear? The pilot is saying the plane was repoed? Is that even possible?" The plane lurched as the tug connected to the front landing gear and began to push them back, not toward the runway, but back toward the terminal. Meanwhile, inside the terminal, Donovan Cross was still standing by the window. He hadn't moved. He watched the massive Boeing 737 being dragged back to the gate like a naughty child. His phone buzzed. It was Gavin. "It's done, sir. We've sent the formal notice to Sky High's corporate headquarters in Chicago. We've also notified the FAA, since Vertex owns the engines and the airframes, and they are currently in breach of contract for discriminatory practices against a board member of the holding company. Well, they are technically flying stolen property if they take off." "Good," Donovan said. "Sir, the CEO of Sky High, Mr. Henderson, is on the other line. He's screaming. He wants to know what's going on. He says 3 flights in Miami and 2 in Dallas just got grounded too. He's losing about $100,000 a minute." "Patch him through," Donovan said. There was a click, and then a frantic voice exploded in Donovan's ear. "Who is this? This is Gerald Henderson. You can't just shut down my airline. Do you have any idea who I am? We have a contract. I'll sue you for every penny you have." "Mr. Henderson," Donovan said, his voice cutting through the noise like a razor blade. "This is Donovan Cross." There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. "Mr. Cross?" Henderson's voice dropped an octave. "Wait, Donovan Cross of Vertex? Sir, I didn't know you were personally involved. There must be a misunderstanding. Why have you revoked our fleet access?" "I'm currently standing at Gate B12 in Atlanta," Donovan said. "I was just removed from Flight 492. Your flight attendant, a woman named Beatrice, and a passenger named Gavin Fletcher decided that I didn't look like I belonged in first class, despite having a valid ticket. I was told my presence was a safety concern." "Oh my God," Henderson whispered. "I don't tolerate discrimination, Gerald, and I certainly don't tolerate my own companies facilitating it. You have 10 minutes to fix this, or I make the grounding permanent. And if I do that, Sky High ceases to exist by tomorrow morning. I'll handle it. I'll handle it right now. Please, Mr. Cross, don't hang up." "I'll be waiting," Donovan said. He hung up and sat down on one of the plastic waiting chairs. He crossed his legs, opened his laptop, and waited for the show to begin. The atmosphere inside Flight 492 had shifted from annoyance to a suffocating tension. The air conditioning had cut out when the engines were killed, and the humid Atlanta heat was beginning to seep through the cabin walls, making the air thick and heavy. Beatrice wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead, her hands trembling slightly as she held the empty champagne bottle. She tried to maintain her composure, the practiced smile of a 10-year veteran, but her eyes darted nervously toward the cockpit door. The captain had been on the radio for 10 minutes, shouting. She could hear him through the reinforced door, muffled words like liability, repossession, and insanity. In Seat 1A, Preston Fletcher was growing restless. The novelty of his victory over the man in the hoodie had worn off, replaced by the irritation of delay. He tapped his luxury watch, huffing loudly enough for the entire first-class cabin to hear. "Unbelievable," Fletcher muttered, looking around for validation. "First they let riffraff in here. Now they can't even get the plane off the ground. Hey, you!" "Beatrice." Beatrice flinched. "Yes, Mr. Fletcher." "What is the hold-up?" The captain said, "Legal issues." "What does that mean? Did they forget to pay a parking ticket?" He laughed at his own joke, looking around at the other passengers. A few offered nervous, polite smiles, but most were checking their phones, frowning at the lack of signal or updates. "I'm sure it's just a minor administrative error, Mr. Fletcher," Beatrice lied, her voice cracking. We should be underway shortly. But she knew it wasn't minor. She had seen the red text on the flight computer. Asset repossession. It was a phrase she had only heard in training nightmares, usually involving bankrupt airlines in third-world countries, not a major domestic carrier like Sky High. Suddenly, the main cabin door hissed and popped open. The jet bridge had been reconnected. A collective groan went up from the passengers in economy. "Folks," the captain's voice came over the intercom, sounding defeated. "We have been ordered to deplane. All passengers must take their carry-on items and exit the aircraft immediately. The flight has been cancelled." "Cancelled!" Fletcher roared, unbuckling his seatbelt and standing up so fast he knocked his champagne glass onto the floor. It didn't break, but it rolled under the seat where Donovan had been sitting. "This is unacceptable. I have a meeting in New York at 5 p.m. Do you know how much money is on the line?" Beatrice was backing away, her training abandoning her. "Sir, please, just follow the captain's orders." "I'm not going anywhere until I get an answer," Fletcher shouted, grabbing his briefcase. "Where is that supervisor? I want to speak to the person in charge." He stormed toward the exit, pushing past a bewildered elderly couple. Beatrice followed him, mostly because she wanted to get off the stifling plane herself. As they stepped out onto the jet bridge and walked up into the terminal, the scene that greeted them was chaotic. The gate area, usually a place of orderly waiting, had turned into a hive of confused activity. But it wasn't just their flight. The monitors above the desk, which usually displayed departures, were blinking red. Flight 4922 to New York, cancelled. Flight 305 to Miami, cancelled. Flight 881 to Dallas, cancelled. Every Sky High flight from that concourse was grounded. Standing in the middle of the chaos, leaning against a pillar with a calm that was almost unnatural, was Donovan Cross. He hadn't left. He was typing on his phone, looking completely unbothered by the pandemonium erupting around him. Fletcher spotted him instantly. He marched over, his face purple with heat and rage. "You!" Fletcher barked, pointing a finger at Donovan. "You jinxed this. I bet you did something, didn't you? You probably complained to the NLACP and got them to freeze the flight." Donovan didn't look up from his phone immediately. He finished typing a message, hit send, and then slowly raised his eyes. The look in them was cold, detached, and terrifyingly sharp. "Mr. Fletcher," Donovan said, his voice smooth, "I didn't complain to anyone. I simply exercised my rights as the property owner." "Property owner," Fletcher scoffed, looking around at the gathering crowd of angry passengers. "What are you talking about? You own the hoodie you're wearing, maybe? Listen, pal, move out of the way. I need to yell at this gate agent." Fletcher tried to push past Donovan to get to the desk, where a terrified young agent named Todd was trying to fend off 30 angry travelers. "Excuse me," Fletcher yelled, slamming his hand on the counter, startling Todd. "I'm a Platinum Elite member. I demand to be rebooked on another airline immediately. First class, Delta, United, I don't care. Get me out of here." Todd looked like he was about to cry. "Sir, I can't. The system, it's locked out. I can't issue tickets. I can't issue refunds. The system says our operating license has been suspended by the lessor." "What does that mean?" Fletcher screamed. "It means," a sharp, female voice cut through the noise, "that Sky High Airlines no longer has permission to fly these planes." Everyone turned. Running down the concourse, heels clicking frantically on the linoleum, was Mrs. Higgins, the station manager for Atlanta. She was a stern woman in a red blazer, usually unflappable, but right now she looked like she had seen a ghost. She was holding a tablet in one hand and a phone in the other. She ignored Fletcher. She ignored Todd. She ignored the 300 screaming passengers. She walked straight up to Donovan Cross. She stopped 2 feet in front of him, breathing hard. She looked at the picture on her tablet, a corporate headshot from a business magazine, and then up at the man in the hoodie. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her face drained of all color. Mr. Cross?" she whispered. Donovan locked his phone and slipped it into his pocket. "Mrs. Higgins, I presume?" "Yes, sir," she stammered. I just got a call from Mr. Henderson in Chicago. He told me you were at gate B12. "I am," Donovan said. "Sir," Higgins said, her voice trembling loud enough for the nearby passengers, including Fletcher and Beatrice, to hear. "Please, we have 4,000 passengers stranded across the East Coast right now. Mr. Henderson is begging you to reverse the order. We can fix this." Fletcher blinked, his brain trying to process what he was hearing. "Wait a minute," he interrupted, stepping between them. "Who is this guy? Why are you talking to him? He's the one I had removed from the plane." Mrs. Higgins turned to Fletcher, and for the first time, her customer service mask dropped. She looked at him with pure horror. "You had him removed?" Higgins asked, her voice a shrill whisper. "You had Donovan Cross removed?" "I don't care what his name is," Fletcher yelled. "He was in my seat. Now get me a flight." "Mr. Fletcher," Higgins said, turning fully toward him, her hands shaking. "There are no flights. There is no airline, because the man you just kicked off the plane owns it." The silence that fell over gate B12 was absolute. It rippled outward, from the desk to the seats, until the only sound was the distant hum of the airport announcements for other airlines. Fletcher's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at Donovan, then at Higgins, then back at Donovan. He laughed nervously. That's a joke, right? He owns the airline. He's wearing sweatpants." "I don't own the airline," Donovan corrected gently, stepping off the wall. He walked toward the counter, his movements deliberate and commanding. The crowd parted for him instinctively. "I own Vertex Holdings. We are a private equity firm. We own the leasing company that provides Sky High with their 737s. We own the engines. We own the maintenance contracts. And technically right now, we own the jet bridge you're standing on." Donovan turned his gaze to Beatrice, who was standing behind the counter, shrinking into the corner. She looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. "Beatrice," Donovan said. She jumped. Yes?" "You cited safety concerns when you removed me. You said my presence made Mr. Fletcher uncomfortable. Is that correct?" Beatrice opened her mouth, but the words stuck in her throat. She looked at Mrs. Higgins, pleading for help, but the station manager was staring at her with a look of absolute fury. I was just following protocol, sir," Beatrice stammered. "Mr. Fletcher is a platinum member. I thought—" "You thought the man in the suit was important," Donovan finished for her. "And the man in the hoodie was disposable. You made a value judgment based on appearance, and in doing so, you violated the non-discrimination clause of your company's lease agreement with Vertex." Donovan pulled a folded piece of paper from his back pocket. Not a legal document, just his original boarding pass. He placed it gently on the counter. "I gave you a chance, Beatrice. I told you it was my seat. I offered to stay. You threatened to call the police." "I'm sorry," Beatrice whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't know." "That's the problem," Donovan said, his voice hardening. "You shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me with basic dignity. If I were a janitor, would it have been okay to treat me like trash? If I were a student, would it have been okay to humiliate me?" "Hey, look," Fletcher interjected, trying to regain some ground. He adjusted his suit jacket, puffing out his chest. "Let's not get dramatic here. It was a misunderstanding. I'm a businessman. You're a businessman. Let's work this out. How much do you want? I can write you a check right now for the inconvenience. $5,000? 10? Donovan turned to Fletcher slowly. The look of amusement on his face was gone. Mr. Fletcher, do you know what I was doing in Tokyo? Buying anime? Fletcher sneered, though his voice wavered. I was acquiring a lithium mine to secure the supply chain for a new electric vehicle battery division. The deal was worth $4 billion. My time is billed at roughly $10,000 a minute. We have been standing here for 20 minutes. You owe me $200,000 just for this conversation. Fletcher choked. But I don't want your money, Donovan continued. I want you to understand how power actually works. You think power is a shiny suit and a loud voice. You think it's snapping your fingers at service workers. That's not power. That's insecurity. Donovan turned back to Mrs. Higgins. Is Gerald Henderson on the line? Yes, Higgins said, holding out the phone. He's on speaker. Gerald? Donovan asked. I'm here, Mr. Cross. The CEO's voice came through, tinny and panicked. Please tell me what you need. I have shareholders calling me. The stock has dropped 12% in the last hour. Here are my terms, Donovan said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent terminal. Everyone, passengers, staff, pilots, was listening. First, Flight 492 remains grounded until I say otherwise. Second, I want a full audit of your passenger removal protocols. Third, I want a formal, written apology from the airline, published in the Wall Street Journal. Done. Done and done, Henderson said instantly. Is that all? No, Donovan said. He looked at Fletcher, who was starting to sweat profusely. There is the matter of the instigator. Fletcher took a step back. Now wait a minute. Mr. Fletcher here caused a massive disruption to your operations, Donovan said to the phone. He harassed a fellow passenger, coerced your staff into violating federal non-discrimination laws, and is the direct cause of this fleet grounding. I am curious, Gerald. Does Sky High Airlines usually allow passengers who cause millions of dollars in damages to remain on their customer list? No, Henderson said, his voice turning vicious. Absolutely not. Mrs. Higgins? Yes, sir, Higgins said. Ban him, Henderson ordered. Lifetime ban, effective immediately. Cancel his return ticket, revoke his miles, and flag his profile in the Alliance database so he can't fly with our partners either. I want him out of my airport. Fletcher's jaw dropped. You can't do that. I'm a Platinum member. I have rights. You have the right to leave, Higgins said, her voice icy. She typed quickly on the terminal behind the desk. Mr. Fletcher, your ticket has been voided. You are trespassing in a secure area. Please vacate the terminal. This is illegal, Fletcher screamed. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you. You think you can bully me? I know people. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. You're holding me hostage. This is kidnapping. Donovan crossed his arms. Go ahead, Preston. Call them. The police did not need to be called. They were already there. The disturbance at Gate B12 had triggered a security alert, and 3 officers from the airport police department were making their way through the crowd. Leading them was Sergeant Kowalski, a burly man who looked like he had spent 30 years breaking up bar fights. All right, folks, back it up, Kowalski boomed, parting the sea of passengers who were filming the entire scene on their smartphones. What is the problem here? Fletcher saw the uniform and immediately lunged toward him, playing the victim. Officer, thank God! Fletcher yelled, pointing a shaking finger at Donovan. This man is a terrorist. He hacked the airline's computer system. He shot down the planes. He's threatening me. Arrest him. Kowalski looked at Donovan, who was standing calmly by the desk, and then at Fletcher, who was sweating, red-faced, and practically foaming at the mouth. "Hacked the planes?" Kowalski asked, raising an eyebrow. He looked at Mrs. Higgins. "Ma'am, what's going on?" "It's a corporate dispute, Sergeant," Higgins said quickly. "This gentleman," she gestured to Donovan, "is the lessor of our aircraft. He has suspended our operating contract. There is no hacking. However, this man," she pointed to Fletcher, "has been banned from the airline and is refusing to vacate the gate area." Kowalski turned back to Fletcher. "Sir, if you've been banned, you need to leave the secure side of the terminal. You can sort out your ticket refund at the counter outside." "No!" Fletcher screamed. "You're not listening. He's dangerous. He's lying. He's just some thug in a hoodie. Check his ID. I bet he has a warrant." Donovan sighed. He reached into his messenger bag slowly. "Officer, I have my identification right here." He pulled out a sleek black wallet and handed his driver's license to Kowalski. The sergeant took it, glanced at it, and then looked at Donovan. "Donovan Cross," Kowalski read. He paused. "Wait. The Donovan Cross? The guy who built the tech center downtown?" "That's me," Donovan said. Kowalski handed the ID back, his demeanor instantly respectful. "Mr. Cross, my wife works at that center. You guys pay for her tuition. I appreciate that." "Happy to help, Sergeant," Donovan said, with a small, genuine smile. Fletcher looked like he was going to have a stroke. "You know him? This is corruption. I want your badge number. I'm going to have your job." Kowalski's expression hardened. He stepped into Fletcher's personal space. "Sir, you are causing a public disturbance. You are screaming in an airport. In about 10 seconds, I'm going to arrest you for disorderly conduct. Now grab your bag and walk away." Fletcher looked around. He saw the hundreds of phones pointed at him. He saw the sneers of the other passengers, the same people he had tried to impress earlier. He saw Beatrice, who was now weeping softly into a tissue, unable to meet his eyes. He realized, finally, that he had lost. But Preston Fletcher was not a man who knew how to lose with dignity. He snatched his briefcase from the floor. "Fine, I don't want to fly on this garbage airline anyway. I'll charter a private jet. You'll hear from my lawyers." He spun around and marched up the concourse, trying to salvage some shred of his ego. But as he walked away, a slow, rhythmic sound began to rise from the crowd. Clap, clap, clap. One passenger started it, then another, then 10. Within seconds, the entire gate area was applauding. They weren't clapping for Fletcher. They were clapping for his departure. They were clapping for the man in the hoodie who had stood up to the bully. Fletcher stiffened, his walk turning into a hurried shuffle as the wave of applause chased him out of the terminal. When he was gone, the silence returned, but it was lighter now. Donovan turned to Mrs. Higgins. "Now, about my flight." "Sir," Higgins said, looking exhausted. "The fleet is still grounded. We can't fly." "The fleet is grounded because I revoked the lease," Donovan said. "I can reinstate it just as easily. But there is one more condition." "Anything," Higgins said. Donovan looked at Beatrice. She looked up, her mascara running, terror in her eyes. She knew she was about to be fired. She knew this was the end of her career. "Beatrice," Donovan said softly. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "You made a mistake today. A big one. You let bias dictate your actions." "I know," she sobbed. "I'll pack my things." "No," Donovan said. Beatrice froze. "Firing you doesn't teach you anything," Donovan said. "It just makes you bitter. And frankly, Mr. Fletcher was the one pushing the issue. You were just weak enough to listen to him." Donovan turned to Higgins. "I want Beatrice to undergo 3 months of mandatory bias training, unpaid. And when she comes back, she doesn't work first class. She works the back of the plane. She serves the people she thought were beneath her. If she can do that for a year with a smile, she keeps her job. If not, she's gone. Beatrice looked at him, stunned. It was a punishment, yes, but it was also a mercy she didn't deserve. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you, sir." Donovan pulled out his phone and dialed Gavin Pierce. "Gavin, sir, reinstate the insurance. Unfreeze the fleet. Let them fly." "Copy that, sir. Lifting the lock now." Donovan hung up and looked at the crowd of passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We should be boarding shortly." The cheer that went up was deafening, but the story wasn't over. Because while Donovan had settled things at the airport, the internet had just woken up. The videos of the confrontation were already viral, and Preston Fletcher was about to find out that the airport was the least of his problems. Preston Fletcher didn't take a private jet. He couldn't find one available on such short notice that would take him. Instead, he had to rent a car, a generic mid-sized sedan because the luxury rentals were sold out, and drive the 13 hours from Atlanta to New York City. He spent the entire drive seething. In the quiet isolation of the car, his mind replayed the events at the airport, twisting them until he was the victim. He was the one who had been inconvenienced. He was the one who had been humiliated by a power-tripping billionaire. He convinced himself that once he got back to his office at Apex Global Logistics, where he was the senior vice president of sales, he would unleash his legal team. He would sue Sky High Airlines into bankruptcy. He would sue Donovan Cross for defamation. He arrived in Manhattan at 3:00 a.m. on Wednesday, exhausted, stiff, and angry. He went straight to his penthouse, poured himself a scotch, and finally turned his phone back on. He had kept it off during the drive to avoid the noise. As the screen illuminated, it didn't just buzz, it vibrated continuously, a solid block of notifications that nearly shook the device out of his hand. 142 missed calls, 3,500 plus. Text messages, and a notification from Twitter, X, that simply said, "You are trending." Fletcher frowned and opened the app. The #1 trending topic in the United States wasn't politics, it wasn't sports. It was the seat thief. He tapped the hashtag. The first video was from a passenger in row 2. It showed the entire interaction perfectly. The angle was unflattering, highlighting Fletcher's double chin as he sneered at Donovan. The audio was crystal clear. "I don't feel comfortable sitting next to him. He looks like he snuck in from economy." The video had 45 million views in 6 hours, but it wasn't just the video, it was the commentary. People had already identified him. His name, his title, his company, his LinkedIn profile. It was all there. Justice Warrior. This guy is Preston Fletcher, VP at Apex Global. Hey, Apex Global, is this who you want representing your brand? Travel boss. Imagine kicking off Donovan Cross. That's like kicking Michael Jordan off a basketball court because you don't like his sneakers. The audacity. Stock Watcher. Apex Global stock is down 4% in after-hours trading. The market hates racists. Fletcher threw the phone across the room. It smashed into the wall, cracking the screen. "Idiots!" he screamed at the empty apartment. "It's out of context. They don't know the whole story." He didn't sleep. He spent the rest of the night pacing, rehearsing his defense. He would go into the office early. He would talk to the CEO, Arthur Vance. Arthur was an old-school guy. He would understand. They would put out a statement saying Fletcher was under extreme stress, maybe blame a medical condition. They would weather the storm. At 7 a.m., Fletcher dressed in his best suit, a charcoal pinstripe that usually made him feel invincible. He took the elevator down to the garage, got into his Porsche, and drove to the Apex Global headquarters in Midtown. When he pulled into the parking garage, his keycard didn't work. The little light on the scanner flashed red. Access denied. Stupid machine, he muttered. He honked his horn until the parking attendant came out of the booth. It was old Joe, a man Fletcher had ignored for 5 years. "Open the gate, Joe," Fletcher commanded. Joe looked at Fletcher through the glass. He didn't smile. He didn't salute. He just picked up a clipboard. "Sorry, Mr. Fletcher. Your pass has been deactivated. I can't let you in." "Deactivated? Don't be ridiculous. I'm the vice president. Open the gate or you're fired." "I don't think I'm the one getting fired today, sir," Joe said quietly. "I have orders. You're not allowed on the premises." Fletcher felt a cold spike of fear in his gut. He reversed the car, screeching his tires, and parked illegally on the street. He stormed into the main lobby, marching past the reception desk. "Mr. Fletcher," the receptionist called out, looking panicked. "You can't go up there." He ignored her and jammed the button for the elevator. He rode it up to the 40th floor, the executive suite. When the doors opened, he didn't see the usual bustle of assistants and junior execs. He saw 2 large security guards standing in front of his office door, and standing between them was Jennifer, the head of HR. She held a cardboard box in her hands. "Preston," Jennifer said, her voice devoid of warmth. "We tried to call you." "My phone broke," Fletcher lied, breathless. "Jennifer, what is this? Why are these goons here? Why is my keycard not working?" "We're terminating your contract, Preston," she said simply. "For cause, gross misconduct, reputational damage to the firm, violation of the morality clause." Fletcher laughed, a high-pitched, manic sound. "You can't fire me. I bring in 30% of the revenue for this company. Arthur won't allow this." "Where is Arthur?" "Mr. Vance is in a board meeting," Jennifer said, "discussing how to save the Q4 earnings report that you just torpedoed. Do you know we lost the contract with Peterson Tech this morning? They saw the video. They don't want to do business with us." "That's unfair," Fletcher yelled. "It was a personal dispute. It has nothing to do with business." "Everything is business, Preston," Jennifer said. She shoved the cardboard box into his chest. "Your personal effects are in here. We will mail you your final check. Escort him out." The 2 guards stepped forward. Each one grabbed an arm. "Get your hands off me!" Fletcher shrieked, struggling. "I demand to see Arthur. I built this department. You're making a mistake. I'll sue you. I'll sue this whole building." They dragged him to the elevator. As the doors were closing, he saw the employees of the 40th floor, people he had bullied, yelled at, and belittled for years, standing by their cubicles. They weren't working. They were watching. And just like at the airport, no one looked sad. Some of them looked like they were trying very hard not to smile. 3 months had passed. The internet moved fast. The hashtag Dart the Seat Thief eventually faded, replaced by new scandals and new viral cats. But while the world moved on, Preston Fletcher's life had remained stuck in the mud. He was unhireable. He had interviewed at 6 different logistics firms, and every interview ended the moment they Googled his name. His reputation was radioactive. His friends in the industry stopped returning his calls. His country club membership was revoked, a violation of community standards. Even his landlord was looking for a reason to break his lease. He was sitting in a dark dive bar in Hell's Kitchen at 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday, nursing a cheap beer. His bespoke suits were in the back of his closet. He was wearing jeans and a polo shirt now. His phone rang. It was an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, fearing it was another reporter or a prank caller, but he was desperate for work. "Hello? Is this Preston Fletcher?" A smooth, professional female voice asked. "Speaking." "Mr. Fletcher, my name is Sarah. I'm an executive recruiter for a new firm called Horizon Logistics. We're looking for a VP of sales with your specific, aggressive skill set. We've seen your numbers at Apex. We don't care about the internet noise. We care about results." Fletcher sat up straight, his heart pounding. Finally, a lifeline. "I'm listening," he said, trying to sound important. "We'd like to meet you. Today. Can you come to One World Trade Center, 55th floor?" "I can be there in 30 minutes, Fletcher said. He rushed home, changed into his last clean suit, and raced downtown. He felt the old confidence returning. Horizon Logistics. He hadn't heard of them, but if they were in the World Trade Center, they had money. He would get the job. He would rebuild. He would show them all. He arrived at the 55th floor. The office was sleek, modern, and mostly glass. A receptionist led him into a massive corner conference room with a view of the entire city. "The CEO will be with you shortly," she said, closing the door. Fletcher sat at the head of the long mahogany table. He smoothed his tie. He rehearsed his pitch. "I'm a closer. I get things done." The door handle turned. Fletcher stood up, putting on his best winning smile, extending his hand. "Mr. Fletcher, thank you for The words died in his mouth. The man walking through the door wasn't a stranger. He was tall. He was wearing a black turtleneck and a grey blazer. He had a calm, terrifyingly familiar demeanor. It was Donovan Cross. Fletcher froze. His hand hung in the air, trembling. "You," Fletcher whispered. "What are you doing here?" Donovan didn't shake his hand. He walked to the other end of the table and sat down, gesturing for Fletcher to sit. "Please, Preston. Sit." Fletcher sank into the chair, his legs feeling like jelly. Is this a joke? Are you Horizon Logistics?" "Horizon is a shell company," Donovan said comfortably. "Fully owned by Vertex Holdings. I bought the lease on this floor last week." "So you brought me here to mock me?" Fletcher's face reddened. "Haven't you done enough? You cost me my job. You ruined my reputation. What more do you want?" "Blood?" Donovan folded his hands on the table. "I didn't cost you your job, Preston. Your character did. I just turned on the light so everyone could see it. Then why am I here?" "Because," Donovan said, sliding a thin file folder across the long table. "I have a business proposition." Fletcher hesitated, then reached for the folder. He opened it. Inside was a contract. "You want to hire me?" Fletcher asked, baffled. "Read the job title," Donovan said. Fletcher looked down. Role, Junior Logistics Coordinator. Salary, $35,000 per year. Reporting to Beatrice Simmons. Fletcher looked up, his eyes wide. "Beatrice? The flight attendant?" "The very same," Donovan smiled. After her suspension, she decided she wanted a career change. I offered to pay for her schooling in supply chain management. She's brilliant, actually. She just needed a chance. She runs the logistics division for my new East Coast shipping hub. She needs an assistant, someone to file paperwork, fetch coffee, handle the grunt work. Fletcher slammed the folder shut. "You think I'm going to work for her? For minimum wage? I was a vice president. I made $500,000 a year." "You were a vice president," Donovan corrected. "Now, you are an unemployed liability with a negative net worth and a mortgage you can't pay. I did the math, Preston. You have about 2 months of savings left before you lose the penthouse. No one else will hire you." Donovan stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. "This is the only offer on the table. You can walk out that door and keep your pride and lose everything else. Or you can take the job. You can learn humility. You can report to the woman you tried to get fired. You can serve the people you thought you were better than." Donovan turned back to face him. The room was silent. "It's a long road back to the top, Preston. But it starts at the bottom. The choice is yours. Fletcher looked at the door. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream. He wanted to throw the chair through the window. But then he thought about his bank account. He thought about the silence of his phone. He thought about the dark bar in Hell's Kitchen. Slowly, painfully, Preston Fletcher picked up the pen. His hand shook as he signed his name on the dotted line. Donovan nodded. Good. Beatrice is expecting you at the warehouse in Newark at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. And Preston? Fletcher looked up, defeated. Wear a hoodie, Donovan said. It gets cold in the warehouse. Preston Fletcher didn't quit the next day. He showed up, and for the first time in his life, he didn't give orders. He took them. He learned that the world doesn't care about the seat number on your ticket. It cares about how you treat the people serving you. Donovan Cross didn't destroy him. He deconstructed him, stripping away the ego to see if there was a human being underneath. It was the hardest lesson Fletcher ever learned, but it was the only one that saved him. The moral of the story is simple. Be careful who you step on while you're climbing the ladder, because you never know who is holding the ladder steady, or who owns the building you're climbing in. True power isn't about making others feel small, it's about lifting them up. And sometimes, karma doesn't just slap you in the face, it offers you a job application. Wow, what a roller coaster. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and the ultimate humble pie, please destroy that like button. Do you think Donovan went too far, or did Preston get exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories about justice, revenge, and unexpected twists, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.